This is the Crossfire Podcast, brought to you by Outlaw Legacy. Guys, we have a lot of fun doing these podcasts, and we really appreciate you listening. If you would like to support us, you can definitely check us out on outlawlegacy.com, where we have all of our merch where you can purchase to help support us and keep these podcasts going. But we will do it for free too because we love it so much.
Yeah, and if you are listening on a podcast platform like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts,
or even YouTube.
We'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, give us a rating, and leave us
a thumbs up.
Or a thumbs up, and leave us some feedback. It's free.
It doesn't have to be good feedback either.
Just some feedback.
I mean, I prefer it to be good.
Yeah.
Positive is always better than
We
negative.
just want some support. That's all we ask. And
that's to our family members too. We're calling you out.
Mom,
Dad,
Mom, the 4 people that listen to this
Jake
podcast,
and Joan,
and our sisters.
and all of our dogs.
They don't have thumbs. So
if they had thumbs, they would.
They would
leave us
force
hate
them.
comments.
So they can't do it, so you can. Go like, subscribe, leave us a comment.
Thank you. OutlawLegacy.com.
Right, so what are we doing? What are we talking about? How's this work?
Okay, we're gonna talk about you. So we'll get
Now
started.
that Craig has taken every analysis criteria I've ever received. And
He knows who you are on paper. He's just missing your social
He knows
security.
who I am on
Yeah.
so are you going to figure out if who I am on paper is who I actually am, or did I just lie really well? In which case I'm a sociopath. So
Well,
I guess we'll find out today.
See you on the third
That's right.
podcast down the road. Okay. Well, it's just introduction. Tell us about you, how you got to where you're at, and we'll dive into some ag talk a little bit and just learn about you.
This could be fun on a lot of levels. Well, I always like to start with my name is Aubrey Bettencourt, and I'm a farmer, and a farmer's daughter, and an unapologetic Californian. I think in a time where California is basically thrown out there as they're a Californian, I kind of own the fact that we're divas. And as a farm girl, I especially own the fact that we're a diva. I dare anyone to compete, kind of thing. Grew up, born and raised in Kings County, 3rd generation there with my dad and mom and younger brother. And found my way. I actually studied history growing up, and found my way into the water and ag space in literally just a curiosity. It was something I was passionate about. I've always been driven by service. I've been driven by commitment to family and community. I'd finished college. I had been on this track thinking I was going to go into some form of national security as a good 9/11 kid. That shaped a lot of my sense of service and sense of patriotism. And found myself suffering an injury for the second time and awaiting surgery, and was back on the farm during 08, 09. And that was right when a lot of the various biological opinions were being updated on the Central Valley Project that were severely affecting water supplies throughout the state. And I was curious about it. I knew just enough about it. I had written actually a thesis paper in college on early California water law, mostly because I was tired of studying Southeast Asia and wanted to try something different. And got my master's in experience and in life. And I started my career literally by taking press releases and calling the names at the top and saying, "Can I buy you a cup of coffee? I read this. I found it very interesting. Can I buy you a cup of coffee? Just sit down and let's have a conversation." And ended up meeting some of my greatest mentors and friends that way, who I'm still blessed to say are my colleagues and friends. And literally we met by my calling their name blindly off the top of a list. And through that experience, introduced myself more, was networking more. You got to remember when I graduated, the economy had crashed. So a lot of my friends from school were going back to school. I wasn't hardwired that way. I love to work and I loved to intern when I was in college. And so I was really looking for where I fit in that space. And I had actually been prepped to go to Washington, D.C. And ended up staying back on the farm. And so I was getting more ingrained in not ingrained, but integrated into the water community, both urban and rural, and found this startup organization called the California Water Alliance. And I actually started attending meetings with them, volunteering with them, and realized they had an amazing vision, this idea of bridging the gap between urban and ag and breaking down a lot of the silos that had existed previously, and that there was a definite space and need for an entity who could transcend and communicate and translate this really complicated subject of water in California into baseline language that everyone could understand and relate to. And that's really what they were working towards. Mm-hmm. And so I started my own business, took them on as a client, and served as their executive director for almost 10 years. And we went from a startup in the back of a bus to running statewide ballot initiatives and having incredible influence in the dialogue around water use and around infrastructure and around rural water quality issues, and had the ability to work across the boundaries that had traditionally siloed the water world, environmental, urban, ag, rural. It was really an amazing experience and a wonderful organization to be a part of in that time. And I know you guys were definitely a part of that as well. It's how, well, we'd already met, but I think we'd done a lot of work together, and we did some amazing work that changed the way the game was played with regards to the way we communicate information, the way we translated information, the way we mobilized people around this issue and around the subject of water. Water has always been a number one issue in California, but they used to say it's an A or Z issue. If you have water, it's a Z issue. If you don't have water, it's an A issue. And we managed to keep it like, we always said, well, can we keep it like a G? Can we just make it a constant?
Right.
And we managed to do that. And I think that's one of the greatest hallmarks of our work, was we managed to raise that concern among the consciousness of California public across socioeconomic and language barriers, because we did a lot of work that was pioneering in hitting various socioeconomic stratas and various cultures and languages throughout the state, that we were able to make water supply and water quality. It always now ranks in the top 3 in the state of California, no matter what's going on. And we tracked that through wonderful partnerships with education organizations, with media outlets. We really transformed the way you thought about coalition billing and a number of other things. Through that, I also picked up other clients and was working in that space. And so where my niche kind of became was the ability to organize and to translate ideas and concepts so that people could understand and would take action, whether that was an entity trying to reposition itself towards a goal, or that was en masse and leading groups through different times and through different places. And so what I would sum that up into is where I spend most of my time is as this entity. I spend a lot of my time in the world of where ag and water and policy all meet, and am able to translate between them all. And that's really how I kind of then caught a springboard out to working as the state executive director for the Farm Service Agency, which is a USDA appointed position. Every state in the union has one person in charge of farm programs for the Farm Service Agency. And I was fortunate enough and honored enough to be able to serve in that capacity. I was the first new person in my lifetime to serve in that capacity, and the first woman.
Wow, I didn't realize that. That was cool.
Yeah, so in my lifetime, they'd rotated between the same like 2 or 3 people.
Wow. In
30 some years. So I was the first kind of new entity in that position. And we did it was really interesting because I joke around that I'd never had a boss until then. So for 15 years, I was my own boss. I had boards of directors and I had clients that I served and always put their interests first, but I was able to keep my own schedule and have my own roles and the way I wanted to do things. And so joining government in a service capacity was like, oh wait, there's a hierarchy and there's entity, there's rules and there's ways things need to be done. And at the same time, what I so enjoyed about coming into that position, someone told me they were a repeater, because I got my eyes opened up into the world of being an appointed person within government, which is an interesting role in and of itself. And we can talk about that in another capacity. It's a very interesting role in our government, an important position in our government, these appointed positions. But someone told me that it was going to be the best job you ever have. And in some ways it was. My job was to keep farmers farming and to keep this network of 30 plus offices from the border of Oregon to the border of California, providing services and support to farmers in our state. My job was to be the representative of my farmers and my staff up through, as an ambassador up through to the USDA, and then also be a representative of the USDA and ambassador back down into California. Mm-hmm. And so you're kind of like a mini Secretary of Ag for the USDA. You're an ambassador on behalf of the Secretary of Ag into the state of California, into the largest agricultural state in the United States and one of the largest economies in the world. And it was absolutely spectacular. It was a wonderful place to be. And I met incredible people in the trenches at these organizations and really thrived on figuring out how we could best provide services and get services out the door to farmers. My philosophy around it was resources are best spent on the landscape in the hands of people who can turn that into thing, not in the halls of Washington and not in the coffers there. And I wasn't about, I wanted to grow out, gather up all this money and give it to people who didn't deserve it or people who didn't need it. I wanted everybody to have an opportunity, and our job was to create that space so that they could either succeed or fail. And then when they needed help, our job was to come in there and help them. And so I worked a lot on disaster response. In my first 6 months, I had at the time, the two deadliest wildfires in state history, the deadliest mudslide in state history, and one of the worst freezes in state history, all within, I think, my first 4 months. And so I really learned a lot and thrived in learning management in that time, because it was about how do I use people who have better experience and understanding and knowledge than I do, and then empowering them to solve the problem, creating an environment, creating a team, maybe shaking up the way we traditionally do things. And we ended up rewriting the disaster response protocol for FSA. And through that, I was able to help my sister states. I was able to go and help with hurricanes. I was able to go and help with volcano eruptions. I was able to go and help, not just with wildfire, but other disasters all over, to make us a more nimble and responsive team. Mm-hmm. So that as FSA, we were the first responders in a disaster for USDA, and we needed to make sure that we were using the best information and technology to get resources on the ground and to be as responsive as we could. And I really, really shaped a lot of the way I looked at government, was this idea that we were in service to the customer. And I took kind of that private sector mentality. Mm-hmm. We were in service to the customer, and we were in service. Our job is to provide a service to that customer. We should be responsive to that customer in an efficient and effective and fair manner. Mm-hmm. And so I was there for 18 months and visited all of my offices in that time, put a lot of miles on the car in that time, and met some amazing people and really fell in love with my state in a whole new way. And I think that just doubled down on my pride of where I'm from, even as crazy as it can be. And from there, I was asked to go to serve at the Department of the Interior as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Water and Science. So at the Department of Interior, which handles the natural resources side, and kind of the joke is it's the Department of everything else, where they didn't know what to do with it in government, they threw it in Interior. So our division oversaw the Bureau of Reclamation, which is all of our reclaimed water resources west of the Mississippi, and the U.S. Geological Survey, the Survey and Science Division for the federal government. And it was at a whole new level. So when I was at USDA, I was very much in the programmatic distribution of services. And by going then up to Interior, I entered into the policy and interpretation and writing of those programs that then have to go be distributed somewhere and go, maybe not as directly because I was at a different department, obviously, but it was definitely more at that higher policy and rulemaking level. Mm-hmm. And so, you'll hear me say this all the time. You guys have heard me say this everywhere I go, but I thrive on reverse engineering things. And so there's no irony is not lost on me that I basically reverse engineered my path in service. That I started on the ground with the distribution of services, and I ended up going up to the policymaking and the rulemaking and the that side of things. So my time at Interior was unbelievably eye-opening. So in Washington, D.C., based here, and had the privilege of working with an incredible team and an amazing leadership group. I've never seen a group of people so capable and driven and experienced and type A and not trying to kill each other. We were so focused on mission that we pushed each other on. And in any other circumstance, I don't know that group of people you could put those personality types together in such a productive way, but we did. And it made you want to be better, whether you were working across with Fish and Wildlife or you were working across with, Bureau of Land Management or internally. But part of the reason I was cross-trained and cross-trained coming from USDA over to Interior isn't just because I had the Western water background, but it also, my background and understanding of having been at USDA and then coming to Interior became integral to the idea of working within the water space of the federal government to bring it into better alignment. And this was a concept that was called, lovingly called the Water Subcabinet. I think it was actually called the Water Policy Coordination Committee at the end of the day. But the idea was to take the 6 departments that had the lion's share of jurisdiction on the water space and to try to bring them into better alignment. In the United States, unlike any other part of the world, there is no Department of Water. There's about 6 departments who all have a finger in that game. And so how do you, as a customer or as a stakeholder, you're going to one and you're going to have to go repeat yourself to another. And then you realize those 2 aren't talking. And so you have to go back and forth. And it's incredibly expensive. It's incredibly time consuming. And if you want to understand why there's dilapidated infrastructure and policies that don't get done, it's because you're doing that a lot. And that alignment just isn't there. It's not to say that these entities don't get along well in your local offices or in the regions, but there's just an alignment and an efficiency that doesn't exist naturally because those agencies are so separate. And so unlike any other administration before, and the only reason I can say that is I was actually working with a lot of people who served in previous administrations and a lot of careers who have served for 30 plus years, we designed an entity that met regularly to, one, start with awareness, an understanding of what each other was doing, an understanding of what the priorities were, and setting those priorities together as 6 different departments, which then expedited processes. And the building of that relationship and having that awareness, I don't have to be an expert in what the Department of Energy is doing. I just have to know that that's theirs. Mm-hmm. And so when it comes across my desk at Interior, I can short circuit the solution, or I can short circuit the pass off, or I can short circuit the spinning wheels to get resolution to a problem or move forward on a service issue or help provide resources where they're needed or support where it's needed. And so those 6 departments are the Department of Interior, USDA, EPA, Department of Energy, Department of Commerce, and the Army Corps of Engineers. And I acted as kind of their de facto executive director. And we started by literally the power of convention, the idea that if we could all at least get to know each other and meet on a regular basis. And so we had staff meetings weekly and we had leadership meetings every 3 weeks. And the ability for us then to set a course and say, we're going to have a priority and we're going to set direction on where the water world needs to be was really powerful. And it actually then kind of permeated into other parts. We kind of became the entity that everyone knew if they had a problem in some other sector, but they needed help in another department, they could come to us because we were in such regular communication with each other and had such a great working relationship. And it made us incredibly efficient and incredibly effective. I think the concern that I had when I came into that project was that this idea that we were growing government, but really what we were doing was we were aligning it and making it more streamlined. And was not an expansion of any authority at all. And we were very committed to that. There was no addition of authority. We all acted within our own individual authority. We all used the tools that we each brought to the table. It was about how we used those tools with each other's tools to make it better and to move the ball forward in the water world. Why is that important? we all are talking about infrastructure and the idea that we need massive amounts of investment in infrastructure in the United States. And it's absolutely true. The one infrastructure sector that seems to be forgotten because we take it so for granted, because we are so blessed in the 20th century in America to turn on a tap and we can trust that that's safe drinking water coming out. For the most part, there are parts of this country that cannot, but for the most part, we can turn on a tap and trust that that's clean drinking water coming out. And so it's the part that gets overlooked. We take it for granted. And there actually is this massive, outdated problem with our water infrastructure, both the hard infrastructure, so that literally the pipes, the dams, the reservoirs, the canals, they need an upgrade. But so do the rules that guide them. And that was another part of what we worked on, was so many of the policies and the rules that guide and direct that infrastructure. Some of it was very well intended and was doing a great job in 1973. When the population was half the size what it is, when we had different priorities in the way we used our resources. And so very quickly, what I had experienced in California, where we have an undersized water infrastructure and an outdated set of rules that guides it, that no longer serves our 21st century population size, our 21st century diversified economy, our 21st century needs and priorities that include environment and public health and water quality. That was the same everywhere, just in different manifestations. Whether I was in the Great Lakes, or I was in the Mississippi Delta, or I was dealing with Florida, or I'm out in parts of the Pacific Northwest, it was the same story. And so to be able to take that perspective and say, how can we work on that as a collective, and how can we set that priority and supercharge these priorities, knowing full well our time was limited and what we had to address. But we were very successful in, I think, bringing all of that into an alignment that allowed us to supercharge it, that identified where we had the opportunity to make strides and to work with our partners and customers to do that, and empower them to do that, and empower the government to provide that service, and to raise the water supply and water quality and water as an issue and a priority among administration that we probably hadn't seen since JFK. I never thought in my lifetime we would be doing dedication of hard infrastructure, and we dedicated a pipeline that was promised in 1963 to deliver water to 6 counties in southeastern Colorado. We did that in 2020. I never thought I would see that day in my lifetime, that the days of big infrastructure was going to happen. And we did it. And we did it in a way that was economically efficient and viable, that was environmentally sound and being held to the highest environmental requirements, and also the highest public health requirements. And we were going to provide water to counties that had water quality issues, places that needed water, places that it could grow, that an economy could continue, that people could have lives and jobs. And so, I kind of, look back on that time, and I got to work on a lot of other things, which were really diverse and interesting. And I've learned, I'm weirdly now passionate about Everglades restoration and just this whole amazing universe that opened up, and all these amazing people that I had the opportunity to work with and serve with, and would do again in a heartbeat, and stand by the work that we did. And at the end of the day, I'm looking at kind of the time since then, and really doing a lot of time and reflecting, because you kind of just end up in blinders on. It was the fastest, amazing, most wonderful, stressful, horrible, disgusting, like riveting, fabulous, heartbreaking 3 years ever. And I would do it again if anybody asked. Maybe not anybody, but I would do it again. Definitely a hard consideration. But I would do it again. And because it really fed my instinct of, I want to get in, I want to solve problems. I love having an empire to defend and an army to lead. And that's what we had. And we had this time to do it in. And but just the people, both appointees, but also careers that I had the chance to meet, communities I had the chance to meet and get to know, and will forever be looking forward to the chance to work and meet and serve with them again, and to work and do those projects any chance I get. And it kind of comes back to, what's my intrinsic drive, and why did I love doing what I was doing, and what is it that I want to do? And it was this great marriage of my life's passions and stories that I found so early in my career. I was so blessed to be 20 some years old and figure out that when I'm in service to my community, and for me, that's my farming community, my rural community, that I was in service to my country, which meant a lot to me. And to be able to continue to do that throughout my career has been wonderful. And so any chance I can to keep farmers farming and get water to people who need it, that's what I do. And so I'm back in that space and helping others in public and private and communities and individuals and organizations and businesses, help them find better ways to serve their customers, to get this beast known as government to provide service to the customer as it is supposed to do, to provide opportunity for health and wellness and success, or failure, but to provide opportunity for you to be able to, again, keep farming and have water because you deserve it. And so that's what I spend my time doing these days.
Can we clap?
That was
And
great.
if I'm not doing that, I'm probably watching old movies, cooking a lot, running. I've become a runner. Ugh. I even hate that it just tastes bad.
Well, you used to run before, right? But just not as
No, not
often.
like this. Not like this. It's like I'm like the Forrest Gump of. I'm a Forrest Gump runner. I run and then I get tired and I go home. Like some days that's 2 miles, some days it's 7, and I'm like, how did I
Wow.
get here?
That's
Where
great.
am I? No, it's not. It's horrible. And because it's not, it like doesn't compute to me, but it's become this part of, like, today I went for a run. Why? I needed to go to Nordstrom. Well, I could have like taken the metro, but why do that? I'll just run. I'll just run to Nordstrom. That works. 3 miles later, here I am. So I'm running. I'm doing that. What else am I doing? I fly fish a lot now. I fish, not just fly fish, but I fish a lot. I golf again. Craig,
Ready.
golfing, ready?
Ready.
Yep, my golf game sucks, so this is a good time to play.
I better take advantage of it
and-
now then.
Take total advantage of the fact that I'm really cute in a skirt and drink well. That's,
Yeah.
That's the best
I
part
was
of
gonna
golf.
say you can't
Yep.
be as bad as I am.
yeah, I think that's where it's at. I'm a really good time. Like that's golf for me.
That's all
Yeah.
golf really
And I'm-
is. A good time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Some people take it too
Don't
seriously.
don't worry about the F-bombs and the
gosh.
shits and the
I
oh
hate golfing
crap
with people
and
like that.
sand traps and all the other
Yeah.
stuff that comes in the way, but
My personal favorite, you bastard.
I mean, you have to have those too. That's the only way to do it. But
That's true. So yeah, that's if I'm not doing all that other stuff, that's usually what I'm out there doing. So
well, I feel like that
Yeah.
was, even though you spent a lot of time explaining everything that you've done, that was still your elevator pitch, because you have so much that you've accomplished within those years that you were talking about that it would take a book to explain all that, and it would just be an amazing book, by the way.
Which,
But
the book is on the list, right?
yeah,
You're gonna write.
a
one
book
someday.
while you're running, by the way. Yeah.
I'm gonna write a book. Okay.
Just dictate it. Just like
sure.
talk it into your memo
Yeah.
app and then send it off to somebody.
Yeah.
Okay. We can work on that. I feel like it'd be a really short book.
No,
No.
I don't think so.
I don't
Doesn't
think
sound
so.
like it.
No?
Definitely not a manifesto or anything like that.
I feel okay. Can at least like every chapter be like whatever, like the pick a title or how blah 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 blah. I feel like that's really my memoir, or how actually to wear high heels and a white blouse at a barbecue, like networking 101, or how not to spill red wine on a white blouse, like that.
That's a good
Yeah,
tip.
that's the challenge.
Yeah.
Yep.
You should have a YouTube channel.
The
TikTok.
trick is, you know the
It's
trick? Don't drink red wine.
So we've talked about this before, but over your different changes in your career, the constant with you has been community and giving back to your community, advocating for your community, and this idea of keeping farmers farming, which I think is fantastic. But what is it about community that has like been at the core of who you are as a person?
I would say, I think because I associate with family, and family means a lot to me. Not only like my family of blood, but my family of choice. You know, I have had personal experiences throughout my life where sometimes the thing that catches you, or the best thing that you have to survive a period of time, is the community around you. And so I think too, part of that might be coupled with coming from a smaller rural community where you're kind of, my mom used to say everybody thinks all the fun stuff happens in big cities, but it all happens in small towns. Mm-hmm. Well, that's because everybody knows everybody, right? Yeah. Everybody is integrated in each other's business. I moved home from college and remembered I couldn't date anybody in the county because I was probably related to them. And once you get hit on by a cousin and you have to remind them that they're a cousin, like, that comes home to you real quick.
Yeah. It gets awkward after
and so I think that sense of community I associate with family very much, in this idea that it's part of what raised me. It's definitely what shaped me in my life and my existence. And when I used to say in meetings when I was up here in DC, I would say, look, I maybe dig my heels in on certain issues, or really want to work through certain policy decisions before we just cut and made decisions on things. And I would sit in those meetings and say, I'm going to push back, because when I close my eyes, I can see the names, I can see the faces and know the names, and I can tell you what their dog's name is, how old their kids are, what truck they drive, of the person that decision is about to directly affect. Mm-hmm. I now have the ability to do that in the reverse too. I know I can close my eyes and tell you who's working on what office, at different departments. So I now have that sense of community on both ends. And I think that's the other part to that, is community is such an interesting part of our society. It creates structure, loyalty, identity, in a way, both positive and negative, but I think it shapes who we are as individuals. And so I place a high value on community. I think for those reasons, because it does shape who we are and how we see the world. And I think you have to be respectful of that in others, especially, when I've been in positions and enjoy being in positions of trying to bridge those gaps between communities. The way you do that is it's the old To Kill a Mockingbird. You don't know someone until you walk around in their shoes for a while. And so I can't figure out how to partner with someone or get them to see my side of an issue if I am not willing to sit there and understand their community and where they're coming from, and what influences their worldview and their side of the issue too. And so getting down to that micro and individual, I think, is so important and so needed in our world, where it's so easy to just slap a label, so easy to just describe a tribe, so easy to hide behind tribalism, so easy to hide behind a moniker. I think the first place you start with breaking that down and making the world a better place is, one, be willing to see yourself as an individual and really get right with who you are as a person, and acknowledge and be proud of that. Forgive what needs to be forgiven, love what needs to be loved, tell to sit down and shut up what needs to sit down and shut up in yourself. And then be willing to, if you're willing to see yourself as an individual and identify yourself as an individual person beyond the monikers, beyond the labels, and beyond the tribes, but understand those roles and how they shape who you are, be willing to do that to someone else. I've just so been through COVID and the pandemic and so many of the other issues we've been struggling with as a community, as a nation, and as society, and as individual communities. My heart just keeps drawing back to, I want to see people as individuals. I want them to see me as an individual. And the only place I can do that is I start with me, and then I be willing to see someone that way too. And yet still respecting all of the communities that influence who we are, and have respect for that, both others and yourself. I love that I come from a predominantly Latino community. I love that I have certain cultures that have influenced my upbringing, that we celebrated all of them growing up, that my mother's first language is Spanish and my Spanish is horrible, as you all know. And then I go to other parts of the country and I love learning about how, I've got, friends and colleagues who are from, they have different backgrounds. They grew up in the back of a diner outside of New Orleans, and they have a totally different perspective on the world as a result. And that all shaped who they are too. And so having respect for that and the communities that shape us and how we then shape our communities and take leadership roles in those communities too. That's, I think, important to understanding ourselves as well as understanding how we move ideas and concepts and support and alliances, and which then become policies and laws and regulations in our society. So.
Cool. I love that. Yeah, I think we have a pretty strong sense of community too. And when you see it in somebody else, it like really, you become attracted to that person. And I have always admired that in you and your selflessness and want and need to serve your community. And that has definitely taken you, it started California based and then you kind of went up from there and now you're in DC, doing awesome things. And it's pretty cool. It's cool to see. And then it's cool to identify that in other people too and see how they do it, to improve their communities, but, make, I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry.
I mean, not
brain
like,
fart, but.
I think because you and I we've bonded on that over years.
Yeah.
Of that. I mean, look, if you really want to boil down to it and get into like the therapy I need, it's probably because I'm trying to save my family. I mean, let's just get honest. Like, this is some Ida Tarbell stuff where she's trying, Ida Tarbell, who wrote the history of Standard Oil. Do you know her story?
Mm-mm.
She wrote the history of Standard Oil because her family owned a small oil company in Pennsylvania, and John D. Rockefeller put her dad out of business. Mm-hmm. And she decided she was going to take John D. Rockefeller down. That there was something wrong with that. And so she wrote the history of Standard Oil. She was this amazing, muckraking part of the Algonquins. She wrote one of the greatest biographies of Abraham Lincoln. She was this great writer in like the Teddy Roosevelt period. And, I actually had someone one time tell me, you're just like Ida Tarbell. You're really in this because your family got affected by this. And I was like, well, yeah, but it just so happens that I actually care. There's the other part of it. So yeah, it is personal to me, and what's wrong with that? Am I able to translate that in a healthy way? Yes. And so I think it does start with at home. Am I trying to save my family? You bet. Have I realized that maybe I can't save everybody? Yes. And it plagues me and it hurts, but gosh darn it, I'm going to try as hard as I damn well can.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's what I was getting at, is that you have some skin in the game, and people who do, and they use that for good. It's incredible.
And that translates to just our own commitment to other things. I mean, we've volunteered at so many events over the years and so many different things that we could see whether it was something we were personally connected to, or it was just something that was the right thing to do. Folks who have that truly empathetic nature and have the ability to put the work behind it, and be truly selfless in giving. I think they are naturally leaders in their community, because that's what community does. It takes care of the community. Mm-hmm. And so not everybody does that. And so we do find each other, and those are people who end up leaders in community, whether or not they're, your bold and brash out front elected official type leaders, or they're your workhorses behind the scenes, who are quietly serving and doing what needs to be done in their community, and you would never know about it. Mm-hmm. I think that personality type naturally leads in their community and finds each other.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. So I have a question for you as far as people that don't know California, don't know agriculture in this state and how diverse it is and how important water is. Can you explain at like a 50,000 foot level how much of a challenge water is in the state of California?
50,000 foot level, how much of a challenge water is in California. So California is the 5th largest global economy. That means it's larger than most states of the United States, like US 1, China. Down there, route number 5 is actually just the state of California, larger than most countries in the world. California didn't become a state until 1850. So somewhere between 1850 and the early part or the middle part of the 20th century. So in less than 100 years, the state became nothing to one of the largest global economies. It did so by the way that the state was laid out and the harnessing of the resources that allowed that to happen. So gold is found in California. It's in this amazing Mediterranean style climate. It takes up most of the West Coast, as we know. I love talking to my friends on the East Coast when I say, okay, start in your house, drive 4 hours south. Where are you? I don't know. I've crossed 5 state lines. Maybe I'm in North Carolina. Like, yeah, I'm just getting to Santa Barbara and I've got like 8 hours to Tijuana. Like, that's the scale we're talking about.
Yeah.
So you've got this amazing, gorgeous Mediterranean climate. You've got these fantastic mountain ranges that created this incredible valley that stretches about 50 miles wide at its widest point, and then thousands of miles, or 800 miles long, excuse me. And then if you tack on Sac Valley and some of the ways it connects, you can even get further. And that was created by a glacier falling off the glacial Sierra Nevadas that then slipped down and melted. And it created this incredible aquifer and brought all this mineral and soil content that's just fantastic, that is combined with this amazing Mediterranean climate. And everybody moves out here and goes, oh my gosh, we can do anything with this. And California becomes a state very rapidly because it had gold. And then it was quick, get people to move out there. Well, we need to support the people out there. And through that process in the early 20th century, someone figured out, wait a minute, if we capture all this snow that falls in the winter as it melts, and then harness that and move it to where we need it, we can deliver water 365 days a year, and start farming on a bigger scale. We can grow more and diverse things because we will make water more readily available, and we will stop overdrawing on our groundwater if we do that. Why? Because in a Mediterranean climate, you get your rain and snow in the winter, and then it all melts, and then in the summers you're dry. So this whole idea that it's a desert isn't necessarily true. It's a Mediterranean savanna grassland type scenario. And so they started figuring it out as early as the 20th century. So state in 1850, by 1910, we're figuring out we can build dams and reservoirs, and we can start capturing rain and snow and moving it to where we need it. We can stop pulling on our aquifer and restoring groundwater. And now we can start diversifying the type of agriculture we're using. We can start putting people in more places than just San Francisco and Sacramento and Monterey. We can start moving them inland. We can start moving them into Southern California and into the Los Angeles area, pulling water off of the Colorado River to do the same thing. And so by the late part of so that's in the early 20th century, we then do another upgrade of that same water system in the 60s. And so by the time you're hitting the 80s, California is now a global economic powerhouse. Why? We figured out how to put people in different places to do different things year round, and we did that with water. So the water systems of California, the dams and canals and reservoirs, the brilliance of them is they really are what I call the hydrovascular system of the state. They are the blood system moving throughout the state, providing that life-giving blood throughout the state. The heart of that is the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta, which is that low-lying, what used to be a tidal basin, because they used to get high tide all the way into Sacramento. And then when we started moving that water from the northern part of the state into the southern part of the state, we started pushing fresh water through, which made it more of an estuary type system. That's the heart of it, because that water, 2/3 of the rain and snow is in the northern third of the state at that line at Sacramento. 2/3 of the population and economy is in the southern 2/3 of the state. The reason we were able to diversify the portfolio of the state, diversify the economy, diversify where people lived, was we were able to capture that rain and snow and move it. We moved it through that heart, which is the Delta. The reason this is complicated is that system was designed really at the turn of the 20th century, and then again updated in the middle of the 20th century. The idea of it being we're going to deliver water to people for economy, for communities, for cities and businesses, and for agriculture. And since then, the economy and the people, the population has doubled in size, and our priorities for how to use that water has changed. So that system currently captures about 30% of all rain and snow. So we actually only capture about 30% of what actually falls on the ground. And so we really only live on about 30% of what the state naturally provides. And of that 30%, originally it was designed for municipal and industrials, for our communities and our businesses and our agricultural reasons. Fast forward to the 70s, and then in a greater capacity in the 90s, we changed our priorities around. We added a third water user that this system is now supposed to provide for, and that is environmental protection programs. We said, hey, public health, environmental health, species and habitat is now a priority, and it requires water in order to support that priority. And so we're going to take that from the pot of water that we have. That section, environmental protection programs, is now the largest user of the water supply that is developed in the state. And it's 50, 40, 10 is what we say. So 50% of the water supply. So of the 30%, 50% goes to environmental protection programs, 40% goes to agriculture and food production, and about 10% goes to municipal and industrial use. So the system hasn't been updated since about the 70s. It's undersized. It was never intended for this type of use. The economy has massively exploded as a result, and it's weighing too heavy on the system. The population has doubled in size and is weighing on the system, and we've added this use that it's not designed to do. And so for California to really continue to grow, and why it is such a contentious issue, is there are those that think that we should be able to survive on what we can, on what we have, and those who, I don't want to say that might be overly simplifying, but I think there are those who believe that there is enough and the priorities have to change, and we no longer are that society that system designed, and so we can afford to prioritize differently and use the system differently, and it will support us. And there are those that say no, it can't, because the reality of it is, while agriculture and food production is only 2% of the state's GDP, it's a 50-some billion dollar 2%. That's a big 2%. And it provides so much for the rest of the nation and the world, as well as California. California gets to export all of that, so it benefits from all of that. I mean, economically, it's an underlying economic generator for the state. So is the environment and protecting the environment. And so making sure we use our resources, precious as water, when we use that and dedicate 50% of our water supply to protecting the environment, we need to make sure it actually works. And that's a lot of where some of the conflict is it working? If it's not, we need to come up with a new way of using it. Are we using the water at the right time in the right place so that it maximizes the ability to support a species, or does it maximize the ability to provide the right water quality or the right water temperature? Or are we regulating it based on a calendar, which makes no sense, because in real time, we actually know we should be releasing water at a certain time. So technology has now outpaced the rules and the infrastructure that we're trying to keep up with all these modern priorities. So a lot of what we're working on, and a lot of where the conflict is as we look at where we're going as a state, we know this is the underlying foundation of who we are and what created us as this amazing place. And so it's going to always be a fight over what are the priorities. And I think this is the same in a lot of issues. What are the priorities and how are we going to meet them? And when you're taking a resource as precious as water, and as some would say, as limited as water, it's cantankerous. And how you control it and who controls it, and is it keeping up with technology? Is it doing what it intends to do? Are we still supporting our economy? Does the economy have to change? Is it possible for the economy to change if you're saying you have to use X amount of water or not? These are all the things that we're working through. But at the end of the day, it comes down to our state has become the 5th largest global economy because of our ability to capture and use these resources in a wise and consistent manner. And now to bring that system into the 21st century so that we can continue to be that state and be that amazing place and economic powerhouse that provides opportunity and health and wellness for all. That's where we're at. And it's upgrading the infrastructure, the hard infrastructure. It's upgrading the policies and regulations that guide that infrastructure and its use. And it's updating the technology and implementing the technology that allows us to do the other two as efficiently and effectively as possible. So it's really about bringing us into the next century so that we can survive into the century after this.
Yeah.
I mean,
really? Yeah.
That was the best explanation. Yeah.
Like oversimplified. Anyone listening to this, what you really you just really need to know 2 things. 2/3 of the rain and snow in California falls in the northern third of the state. 2/3 of the population and economy is in the southern 2/3 of the state. Golden rule, number one. Number two, the system that moves that water from north to south hasn't been really massively updated, either in infrastructure or in rules and regs or in technology, since the 70s. That right there is the crux of the issue.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, even just locally, how we look at our system now, it's just here in our county. It's a challenge. Well, yeah, it's a challenge to get water on a yearly basis, right? I mean, I don't know what the allocation this year is, but I think it's somewhere around 20% allocation. And for a farmer who relies on that water or may not have the access to well water because either water quality or regulation or other, how do you grow a crop? How are you able to make a livelihood?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can't farming. You don't flip a switch. You don't just turn the factory off and stop making a widget. Mm-hmm.
Or move, right? You can't just pick up all your trees and move.
Sell it and go.
If I could grow an almond in Texas, I would.
Sure.
I mean, let's be honest, but I can't, and no one's GMO'd that for me, so here I am. But I probably just gave some student at the University of Texas.
Please, someone figure it out.
Sorry. Damn. Whoops. Forgot who I was with. So, you're spot on. So now it's because we've added these modern priorities to a system that was never designed to do that. And then because those modern priorities, were implemented in the form of laws and regulations that had problems and that were easily challenged, it's created an environment of what was designed to create certainty. This system that was designed to protect from flooding and provide fresh, clean water 365 days a year is now the most uncertain, unstable system we have.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. And that became such a hallmark of what we were trying to work on, was it not only, and it was an eye-opening experience for me. I was like, okay, we got to get the rules written so that I can earlier announce how much water we're getting, right? We've got to get the rules updated so that we can have a better idea of how we're going to operate the system earlier, so we can give allocations early to our farmers and cities so they know how to start planning ahead of time, right? Traditionally, the state water project, so we have the state water project and the federal water project, which, everyone listening, sometimes those projects actually work together. They share infrastructure in certain places. One is obviously operated by the state. One is obviously operated by the feds. Really, the only difference of which type of water you're using is who you cut your check to. If you're cutting your check to a state water district or you're cutting your check to a federal water district, that tells you if your water's federal or state. It's really the only difference. Overly simplified. That's really the only difference. Traditionally, the state water project will give its allocation in the late fall, early winter of the year before. So we call our water year starts in October. So September.
That's the beginning of a rain season, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a Mediterranean calendar. So we go on a Mediterranean calendar and a Mediterranean water year. So our water years always start October 1 of the previous year. So water year we're in right now, water year 2021, actually started October of 2020. Goes around. Why? Because we're starting to get rain and snow, and that's when we need to start measuring. The state water project usually initiates its allocations earlier. That has to do with where their headwaters are. Their biggest reservoir is Orville, which tends to get positioned earlier in the system and earlier in the season, so they can get a better idea on the state water side earlier. That literally is geography is what dictates that. And then the feds, typically growing up, we always had a federal allocation in late January. And then by the time I got out of high school and into college, or by the time I got out of college, we weren't getting allocation until, gosh, you guys probably remember as well as I do, February, March.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't getting allocations, right? Yeah. And then some years we didn't get an allocation until June. Mm-hmm. you can't manage. And our growing season, as we all know, somewhere between Easter and October.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much water I have until May, June. I don't know how many acres I need to put in production. What can I grow in that time period? If I've switched to permanent crops, now everything's going to that. If I have any open ground, I mean, the decisions that then get made have a direct effect on land use, soils, air quality, employment, sales, economy, food supply,
Trickle effect.
Oh my gosh. And now I think thanks to the pandemic, one of the greatest gifts the pandemic gave us was a total heightened awareness of supply chain in the food sector. Thank you. I hate to say that, but I mean, it gave our customer a heightened awareness because, again, thanks to living in this amazing place that in a very short period of time pioneered things like electricity and refrigeration, we have food regularly available.
Yeah.
I never in my lifetime thought I would see grocery stores with nothing on the shelves. I've seen it in my lifetime in the last year.
Multiple times.
So has everybody.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
So we now have this heightened awareness to our customer, which I think is very beneficial, but we have to make the connection of how our water supply directly is connected to that food supply chain. And so with all of this conversation around supply chain, I think there's a great opportunity to continue to dialogue with our customer and consumer and decision makers in that space. But at the end of the day, if I don't know how much water I have in a Mediterranean climate, I can't make any other decision in farming until I know that number. And so not only is it about making that water supply, which was designed to provide regularity and then this baseline where possible, it was designed to hold us over in dry years, knowing full well in a Mediterranean climate, not only do we have a dry season, sometimes we have dry years. The current system, though undersized, actually has enough water for 3 years in it when it's full. 3 years when it's full. But because we have irregularity in how we operate it, because for years we operated it based on arbitrary calendar requirements, not based on real-time environmental conditions, we were releasing water in capacities during times of year we should have been hanging on to it. It wasn't helping species at the time. It wasn't contributing to water quality or water temperature at the time. And the next thing you know, you're at a deficit heading into a dry year.
Big facts.
And it's the ultimate oh shit moment, right? Like,
yeah.
And then you're left like trying to figure out how to get through with one arm tied behind your back. So much, I think. And I was this way even before I went to work with the Bureau, but I think oftentimes we vilified the Bureau of Reclamation in that process. And I always tried to be respectful of them because, they're engineers and wrench turners. They're trying to figure it out too. Like, Reclamation's job is to hang on to water and deliver it. That's their job. That's what they were designed to do. Army Corps of Engineers, they're like, get rid of water. Like, stop flooding, get rid of water. That's what they do. And so, when you understand that baseline mission, you kind of changes the way you want to work with them. And I think they, my experience is they're trying to solve problems too, but you have to arm them with the flexibility, the technology, the regulatory environment that allows them to help solve problems, and achieve goals in these spaces. That also goes to identifying goals that are achievable, especially in that environmental space. I think we so often set the ideal that's never achievable, when we need to start setting achievable and using that precious resource in that way to make sure we're documenting results so that we know what works and we can continue doing it. Or when we find out something that we're doing isn't working for a desired outcome, we stop doing it and we do something else. What we call that is adaptive management. It's the idea that if we can function in real time, which now we have the capacity to do, we can adaptively manage our environment like we mean it and actually give species a chance to survive, give water quality a chance to improve, and still provide flexibility for providing for water supply as well. So it's about allowing the engineers and the tech geeks who actually do know how to do this, the flexibility, and giving them targets that they can achieve. And my concept of that is I really understand it, because as a Californian, I get it. We build magical cities of imagination and then have economy just spurring up somewhere. Like, that's who we are. And it's that old line about they built the train tracks through the Alps, even though there wasn't a train that could do it. I get that. I get the aspirational part of that. But when we're playing with life and death like we are, I think for us, and I learned this when I studied water management in Australia too, identifying the achievable, documenting how we can get there. When you achieve it, you're now at a level where you can see a whole new range of possibility. Okay, now there's even more we can go after. But when I'm trying to get here, how can I even see to that? And I'm throwing good resources and good money and good people at something that I'll never touch. I'll never get to. And so I think this idea of, again, setting those achievables in our environmental management and managing the environment like we mean it. I hate seeing salmon die. I hate seeing environment go to hell. I want to see it managed like we mean it. And I've seen success in this country. I've seen us bring species back. I've seen us, it is possible. I've seen it in Utah. I've seen it in North Carolina. I've seen it in Florida. It is possible when we set goals we can achieve, we manage our resources and treat it as precious as it is and work together in that space instead of trying to shoot for the moon. I think it is so possible, and we can probably do a better job by the environment if we manage that expectation better.
Yeah. Totally agree.
Yeah. So a lot of people may be emotionally invested with the environment and how we're treating it. And sometimes they vilify farmers in a way that they think that we are putting on fertilizers in an abundant amount, and we're ruining the groundwater
and the ground.
And we are, killing fish by taking the water from them and applying it to these almond trees, which are terrible. I don't know how many gallons of water it takes to grow an almond. Yeah. So, in quotes, what do you say to somebody who doesn't know a farmer, doesn't know what our lives are like, what it's like to be a farmer? What would you say to somebody who just doesn't know where their food comes from, water, things like that?
I think I would have this conversation with them. I would want to find out, okay, what do they think they know? What do I know about them? Because maybe I don't understand where they're coming from. Where did they hear that? Why
do they
think
even
that?
care, really? Do they understand how big the issue is?
Yeah. No, you bring up a good point. Amanda and I have had this conversation. I'm pretty sure we all had this conversation. From your business, and then, from where I come from too, like it's basic psychology. You can't make someone care about something they just don't care about.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
How do you make someone care about something? You have to find out what they care about first, right? You got to, you tell me, you guys are in the business of connecting and communicating to populations. How do you do that? You've got to find out what they care about, and does it connect to what you care about? And how do you make that connection personal and relevant to them?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a relevance factor, right? So I what do I tell someone who knows nothing about ag but starts spewing that kind of stuff? Like Uber drivers sometimes.
Are you getting flashbacks? War flashbacks here?
It's cool. Usually I ask questions. Oh yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so yeah, almonds use a lot of water. Well, if you keep eating almonds, then that's how much water it takes to grow them.
Or almond milk. Do you drink almond milk? How much?
Right. Yeah. If you don't value, if you value the nut, that's what it takes to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a values question. It's a value question. Okay. You value the environment. I do too. Isn't it horrible that we were operating under the same rules and regs and watching the species continue to decline for 20 years and didn't do anything different about it? I want to see that change too.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you?
Spin it on them. I like it.
And I think, am I spinning it on them?
No, I don't think it's spinning. I think it's finding the common ground and what's relevant, and it isn't spinning, because at the end of the day we want the same thing, And we're just looking at it differently, and our facts are different, and it's
our experiences are different.
Our experiences are definitely different, and our environments are different. So it's communicating that. And I don't think that general blanket statement, I don't think that we do that well. And we also don't listen well as an industry, which is a reason why I think that we're under attack a lot of the time. But I think it's a case by case scenario. I think there are some people who are always going to hit you with the almonds use a lot of water fact, and they're just, you know, there's the trolls on the internet who are always going to say that, and then there's other people who are going to say that because they really don't know the facts, or they are miseducated, and those are the people who you can have a conversation with.
I mean, what percentage of the population? I mean, they're spewing the fact, right? Almonds use X amount of water, and that's such a waste of water. I saw it the other day on Twitter, and my head about exploded. I was like, typing, nope, don't do it, you know? And that it was getting into a place that I thought was very dangerous. It was the conversation on Twitter was getting into a place of this gets really macro, you know, really micro, but it was getting into the space of, well, it's the people's resource, and if you use the people's resource to do something for export, it is no longer a benefit to the people, and so we should tell anyone who uses the resource what they can and cannot do with it. So you shouldn't grow almonds because it's an export resource. You're using the people's resource to export a product. So it's a waste. Okay. My initial response was, I'll be right over at your house to start going through your closets of any made in some other nation shit that I determine you don't deserve. Mm-hmm. That was my response. But that was my getting my Portuguese up. Like,
you mean you didn't hit tweet on that or publish?
Oh nope, didn't even type it. Just imagined typing of it, because that was getting into a dangerous place in my mind.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about individual property rights and you know, business practices and individual rights to do business, and you're getting into market controls that are not, you know, you're getting into a whole place that I don't think, do we really want to go there? Do you really want to go there? Okay, then no one can buy product made anywhere other than in California ever again. And California, you're not allowed to send anything outside of your own borders. So Hollywood, you're screwed. Yep. If you can't sell it in California, don't sell it at all. Like, really? And I know someone's going to say you're being, you know, obscene or absurd. I like pointing out the absurdity of illogical arguments, though. Like, and that's part, you know, so I think, to your point, listening really well, you know, we don't listen well. Going to the point of, does anybody care? Is it worth fighting with someone who doesn't, or who's already made up their mind? One thing I've learned recently, or really been trying to embrace, is like someone who already knows how to make certain arguments, there is no changing their mind.
Right.
So why try? Like, I'm not going to change your mind. I want to find the person who I can have a conversation with, and maybe they'll change mine and I can change theirs, and we can find somewhere to get us to where we need to be. That, to me, is the majority of people. We just haven't talked to them.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to talk to us. To your point, Craig, how would they know? So when I run into an Uber driver who I love Uber, anybody listening, dear Uber, with your metrics listening to this, I love Uber, always do, use them like crazy.
When you're not running.
Amazing people. When I'm not running. When I'm not using the Lamborghinis. I you know, I love Uber. I love meeting people. I love meeting people from different places. When I hear those arguments, and it's clear they've never met a farmer, and you find out very quickly that they're learning this from, you know, some junk CNN report that pulled off of Wikipedia that somebody paid to have edited, because, you know, I wouldn't know anything about that. The first thing I try to do is say, that's interesting. Well, I am a farmer from there who grows those almonds. What would you like to know? They've never met you.
Yeah.
They've never met any of us.
And I think that's the problem.
You know? Yeah. I mean, the first thing we can do is, and they'll be fat. I mean, how many of us have traveled the world and been like, yeah, well, I actually do that.
Yeah.
let's talk. And it's like, wow, you're a farmer? Oh, what is that like? There's a fascination to it. They've never met us.
Right.
They've never met us. Now, I think social media is helping a lot. But we have a chance, I think every chance we get to say, well, what would you like to know?
Mm-hmm.
I'll just answer honestly, truthfully with you. Well, are you poisoning, when did you start poisoning my kid? Well,
when I started poisoning my kid. I'm kidding.
Right? Like I can't have that conversation. You've obviously made up your mind on something.
Yeah.
But I think with other folks, it's like, well, I just hate that you're using all of this material and you're, not material, that's something we would say, but you're pouring all these fertilizers and pesticides on things. Well, actually, we don't like doing that. We try not to do that at all if we can help it. And we do a lot of things like natural crop rotation, and we use incredible amounts of scientific help from the university systems. And we're to, really try to open them up to how advanced we are and what we do, and walk them through those decisions and liken that to something that they can compare to. And there are so many things that are being said today in our world with regards to farming and natural resources use and ag and timber and ag and farming and ranching and grazing and you name it. Anyone who's using natural resources in any way, there's so many misnomers out there. The problem is we're always explaining. Mm-hmm. And if we're explaining, we're dead.
Yep.
It's too
late. So on an individual level, explain away. Like, have a nice conversation. I think the biggest thing is realize when you can't have a conversation. Like Dre said, like, walk away. If don't get into a fight. That's just, that doesn't help anybody. But if there is an opportunity to have a conversation and help people out, then let's have that conversation and help people out. Find out where they're coming from, because you're going to learn more on that than anything. But I think on the macro side of it too, we've got to quit explaining. We need to quit explaining and apologizing and own that we are the best in the world. We hold ourselves to the highest standards. We don't like wasting time, money, or effort, and we aren't going to poison you because we certainly don't want to. We're growing the things that we believe the marketplace wants. And if you don't like it, if you don't like eating the nuts, then if you don't want us growing them, stop eating them. Mm-hmm. Stop explaining, claim our space, say abso-flippantly, we are the best at what we do. We are investing consciously into being even better at what we do, because we are here to serve and feed and continue to provide for you, our customer, and our community. And I think that's what we've got to get into, the mentality of owning our space and not explaining anything. Make someone else explain why we're the bad guy. Because the last I checked, vast majority of people in our country wants to know that they have a roof over their head that they can afford, that their kids are okay, that the water coming out of the tap is fine, that they can go about living their life and can afford to buy safe, healthy food for their families every day and put that meal on the table for their families every day. That's what we do. That's what we do. I don't know anything better than that.
No, there's a lot of joy and pride that comes out of that. Definitely, especially in our family.
Yep. That was a mic drop moment. Okay. Yep. All right. To finish it up, kind of I don't know. You might roll your eyes at this question, but it's a good good reflection time. What advice would you give to 18-year-old you? There it was.
That wasn't an eye roll. That was a whoa. 18-year-old me. Whew. Gosh, I was busting my ass at 18. And I loved it. I don't know about that part. I don't know that I would leave. I wouldn't touch that part of her. She's good. She's fine there. Keep busting your ass. Keep hustling. Keep working hard. Stay scrappy. You know what? "18-year-old me. You do know what you're doing and you got this. Trust your instincts and go." I think that would be the biggest advice I would give 18-year-old me. Trust your instincts and go. I think I spent a lot of time. I think a lot of 18-year-olds, especially 18-year-old girls, were second guessing, whether it's we're caring too much about what others think, which I can't say that ever really truly defined me too much. I always kind of thought of myself as very unique and different, so I didn't care too much about what I thought others thought of me. But I definitely put a lot of pressure on myself and was always like desperate to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And that then led to self-doubt.
Yeah, I think
in a lot of ways.
I think we're both similar in the fact that we, if you give us enough time, we can talk ourselves out of anything. We overthink things, and sometimes we are our own roadblock. So, yeah, I definitely think that's great advice.
Yeah. I think trust your gut and go, and you got this. The other thing is, I think I would tell myself, and it's something I still tell myself today, is, like, tell the hypercritical voice in your head to sit down and shut up. Just shut up. It's not the end of the world just because you screwed up. Like, dust yourself off, get back up and roll. You've got this. Trust your instincts. You'll survive it. I think realizing, at 18, I think that's the right advice. I think that's the right tone. And you're not going to get it all the first time. I think I put a lot of pressure on myself to get it right the first time. I think I compare myself to a lot of people who have years of experience over me, and I think I have to be there. I was fortunate enough, and I think you all too. I was raised by really powerful, experienced women. And my dad, of course, but my mom and my aunt especially. But I was surrounded by these really powerful and experienced and capable women. And I, for some reason, always thought I needed to be like competing at their level. And I'm going, oh my gosh, they're so much older than me.
Yeah.
Like, of course they know this before I do. Or of course they realize that lesson, and I'm not supposed to know that at 18, right? Like, so I think that's the other one, is just like, you're not, like, it's okay. You'll get it. It won't be right now. Don't worry. You'll get it. You'll be all right. Just trust your gut and roll. I think that would have been the best advice for me at 18.
That's
awesome.
great.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Cool. Well, thanks for dropping some knowledge today, and spending some time with us.
More fun hanging out with you guys ever.
Yeah, we got to see if we can get Larry and Carmen on here.
Ooh. That's some danger zone right there.
We love danger zone.
Sorry.
We one thing that we love about Aubrey's family is that I don't know, they're just like our spirit animal. Like, everything that we want to be is like their
the Bettencourts.
Yeah, their family.
We want to be the Bettencourts.
We yeah, I mean, some of the darkest times in our business career, we've gone over to talk with you and your mom and your dad, and it's just kind of I don't know how to explain it. It's just a relief that it's a sense of comfort that we get there.
Yeah, and you guys have always been super welcoming and open, and great to like talk things through. And I feel like this is so cheesy, but you guys have brought us light in like super dark times, and there's just so much like wealth of knowledge there individually, like what and in your friendship, but also like Larry and his calm demeanor, and he's just, whatever it is that you want to talk about, there's something to talk about. And there's always some sort of like little life lessons in there too that we can take away. And I think we're pretty lucky to have stumbled upon you guys.
Yeah, definitely blessed. Hashtag blessed.
Hashtag blessed. My family gave me and my brother a choice growing up, that we could live our lives. We could live the examined life, which was not always going to be the happiest all the time, but it was going to be the most fulfilling. Or we could not. We could just kind of go through, and that's fine. And there's no judgment either way. But once we made the commitment as individuals to say we were going to live our lives that way, which is the way my parents have chosen to live their lives, it really opened us up to the opportunity of that idea of intent is everything in everything we do. generosity and kindness, empathy, purpose, which really helps when you're an overthinker. Self-awareness is like an addictive drug for me, but I think being raised in a family that the greatest, like, it brings all of us joy. It's one thing that's like in our nurtured DNA as a family is to make others feel welcome. And so to hear you guys say that just brings joy to my heart, and I can't wait for us to do this again on the porch.
Yes.
I think we should do a porch session.
I think we should too.
That'd be great.
We actually talked about that not too long ago. We were like,
Dre, have you been to the porch yet?
Dre,
you got to come out to the porch.
She has. Well, actually, she stopped there once, but she hasn't been on the porch yet.
During fall, your mom's pretty good at decorating.
Oh yeah, that's
pretty good as an understatement.
Yeah, pretty good as an understatement. It was awesome.
The queen at decorating.
We're very festive people. No, you got to come out. We got to do the porch. You got to have a set on the porch.
Drink a Shinerbach.
Drink the Shinerbach and have a set on the porch. We're going to solve all the world's problems from that front porch, I swear.
Yeah, perfect. I'm sure we will. All right, well, we won't hold you any longer.
Love you guys.
Yes,
love you too.
Love you too. Thank you so much. Well,
that was Aubrey Bettencourt, guys. What'd you think? What?
Aubrey is she's a machine. She's awesome. She's compassionate, but she's also she just is on a higher level than I could ever be or think on.
Yeah. I definitely enjoyed that history lesson. The multiple history lessons she gave us, she put it in a different perspective for me, and it was just a lot to take in, but she made it super real.
Yeah, and I think...
And understand, like, able to understand it.
Yeah.
She didn't throw in a lot of, like, super scientific things or laws or anything like that, but she knows. She knows all of that.
Her superpower is to take super, super complicated things and make them easy to understand. Yeah.
Digestible.
And she does a great job with that on just about any subject, but water is her, like, bread and butter, and she knows it inside and out. And even for us we live here in California, and I feel like I have quite a bit of water knowledge, definitely not to the extent that Ob does. And I think Craig also does too, but there's always something to learn when we talk to Ob. And I was excited to get on this conversation because I know that there were things that Dre had questions about before. Mm-hmm. And to hear her explain that was freaking awesome. And I think that a lot of people are going to get a lot of information out of this podcast. So I'm pretty excited about it. And even more excited that she agreed to do this with us. She has a very busy schedule.
Yeah.
And we appreciate very much appreciate her coming on with us and talking to us. Some of the things that she talked about today were just, hit me with a baseball bat right off the front, that she would cold call people to buy them a cup of coffee. And these are people that she had never met. She's never.
Yeah. When she would receive a press release, like the media contact person, she'd, just cold call them up and be like, hey, let me buy you a cup of coffee and let's talk. I could not even fathom
I
that. Would never. As an introvert, I have been that media contact person. And when a press release goes out, I pray that nobody calls me. So, but that's just who she is. Like, when there's information out there and she wants to know it, and she just goes straight to the source.
Yeah. Yep. She, the other thing, when she was working for the USDA, where she was the head of the FSA office for the state, she had so much she had to jump in with both feet.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, she had the two most deadliest wildfires in state history, the worst and deadliest mudslide in state history, and one of the worst freezes in state history.
And I remember when all of that happened back then. It was like a weird time, and I couldn't imagine being in her position where, like, she was fairly new in that position.
The first 4 months,
yeah, and then all of these, like, crazy catastrophes happen. How do you deal with that?
And her job, and for the people that don't know what the FSA office is, she did a good job explaining it, but her job was to basically get farmers farming, get them back to farming. So whether their infrastructure or their animals or whatever was destroyed or
whatever they needed, they basically got federal funding to help them get back on their feet, to continue producing a product for the economy. Yeah, and I didn't realize she was the first woman serving in that capacity. That's pretty badass.
Yeah, that's rightfully deserved. I mean, she deserves all of that recognition. She's
so
perfect person.
Aubrey for president t-shirts. Do we start that merch line?
We should have started it like a year ago.
Yeah.
We'll start it for the next one. Bettencourt 24.
Yeah.
24.
I love that. So yeah, that's Aubrey Bettencourt. Gosh, that's not the last we're going to hear from her. We're definitely going to have her back on the podcast.
It sounds like we're going to have porch sessions. So if you guys have any questions for her or would love to hear more on a specific subject, drop your comments down below on Instagram or send us a DM or email us. Send a pigeon, something, and we will get those questions.
Don't send mice. We have plenty of those.
Yeah, no mice. Send us your questions, and we'll get them teed up for the next round we have with her.
Yeah, and we, like I said, we barely scratched the surface of her. She has so much experience in a lot of things.
We didn't even talk about movies.
We didn't talk about movies. We didn't talk about her farming experience. I mean, she has a lot of farming experience. She has a lot of policy experience. I mean,
yeah, and she's like a movie fanatic. She was on radio every Friday talking the movie topic.
Classic movies.
Didn't even talk about that.
Yep.
So much to talk about.
We missed out on a lot.
We did. Where did the time go? Okay. Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, and like I said, you could catch us on YouTube and check us out on outlaw. Let me say that again. outlawlegacy.com. Peace. This is the Crossfire Podcast, brought to you by Outlaw Legacy.